Welcome back to another season in review episode where we take one team and review their season, just like it says in the title. We grade out every single position player, take a look at the highs and the lows, and just overall, we look back on the 2024 season. And then at the end of the episode, we look ahead to the 2025 season, and I give some improvements that I think can be reasonably made for, in this case, the Florida Gators to improve. So, what's up, guys? Thank you guys so much for tuning in as we take a look at the Florida Gators, who finished the season 8-5 with a dominant bowl win against Tulane. And yes, they did have a extremely hard schedule, and I think they overperformed for where their schedule had them at. So, let's just dive right into the episode. Okay, so now in this first segment, we will look at my on for the Gators. My first one that was that this season was a job saver for Napier. You played a ton of ranked teams, a ton of really good teams, and a very tough non-con schedule as well. You came out 7-5 and then beat down Tulane in the bowl game. Now, this Tulane team looked more like an FCS team than anything, but be that as it may, they still stomped on them and finished with 8 wins with a extremely difficult schedule. My second point here was that this team was similar to previous Florida teams. You know, you have a decent quarterback. Quarterback has never been the problem at Florida. I feel like that's a pretty well known fact. You know, you go back to before DJ Lagway, you had Graham Mertz, who had the highest completion percentage out of any quarterback in the college football universe. Excuse me, in college football. So he was a very good quarterback. Then you have Anthony Richardson, top 15 pick, and then you go back and back and back. You know, guys like Kyle Trask and whatnot. So quarterback has never been the problem. Wide receiver has really never been the problem. The problem has been the defense, and the defense did let them down in games this season. They played a ton of high scoring games. So I will say that this team was similar to previous Florida teams that kind of went 6-6, 5-7. You know, those couple past teams over the last couple years. And then my third point here is that DJ Lagway will provide stability at quarterback for years to come. This team is was very young. You look to guys like Eugene Wilson, who has talent out the wazoo. Some of these players coming in their class, the 2025 recruiting class, excuse me. And you have a really young core here, headed by DJ Lagway, and he will provide stability at quarterback for years to come. Did he have great numbers this year? No, he did not. He did not perform like a good quarterback. He performed like an average quarterback. So did Dylan Raiola at Nebraska when it comes to true freshman quarterbacks starting 10 plus games. You know, these quarterbacks, they don't have decent stats because they're coming just straight out of high school. It's why you sit a guy, because they look kind of average. Even the best ones look pretty average in their first year. But like Raiola, I think that DJ Lagway will continue to progress and be a star by the end of his tenure with the Gators. And the fact that he has multiple years with the Gators will, assuming he doesn't transfer, will provide stability at quarterback. Okay, so now we go into our second segment here, which is grading section. The first half of this will be the offense, and we'll go to the defense, and then overall grades for coaching, offense, defense, special teams, and then an overall grade at the end for the whole team. Coaching on the offensive side was a B. Billy Napier did give up the controls when it comes to play calling, but he did have a heavy hand in this offense. But, you know, the coaching, it was just about average to above average. I didn't think that there was anything special here when it comes to the offensive play calling. They could have done a little bit better job, but they certainly could have done a lot worse. So, especially, you know, when you go back to Napier calling his own plays, it didn't really end as well as Florida fans would have hoped. So, you know, him relinquishing some control there gave it a B grade. It could have been lower. At quarterback, we already talked about this, a B grade. This is about average. Like I said, about average. He didn't even get Lagway, excuse me, did not go over 2,000 passing yards. He had 101 rushing yards on 50 carries, so that averages out to 2 yards a carry on the ground. So, you know, his dual threat ability definitely needs some work. He needs a lot of work, but he is a guy that has talent out the wazoo. His ceiling is incredibly high, and honestly, this is his floor, being an average quarterback. So, can he progress? I think he 100% will progress. I don't think that he will stay where he is right now for much longer. You saw spurts of it. He was great, but again, for this past year, you really have to give it a B. I graded Lagway as a B minus. Mertz got a B. I averaged it to a B. Mertz was actually pretty good when he was in. He still had a very good completion percentage, and when he was in, it was actually really good. Uh, but Lagway, had a 60 completion percentage, 12 touchdowns through the air, through 9 interceptions. These numbers do remind me of Dylan Raiola. Lots of interceptions, decent amount of touchdowns, decent amount of yards. So there we go at wide receiver. At rushing with the running backs, I gave it a B minus. It was average. You had guys like Jaden Baugh, who was a freshman, and he led the team in rushing yards with 673. That isn't a great number, but still it was pretty darn good. Montrell Johnson had 100 carries for 593 yards. Excuse me, he just got under 600. And then the third running back on the roster, Jacoby Jackson, had 509 yards. So, they spread the rushing yards out pretty evenly. Through those three running backs, they had around 1,700 yards. So, it was just about average, in my opinion. Maybe a bit above average, you could argue that, but certainly nothing above that, in my opinion. When it comes to receiving, I gave him a B plus. I think this receiver group was pretty underrated in my opinion. It was definitely one of the more talented rooms around. Elijah Badger led the team in receiving yards with just over 800. Chamari Dike, the transfer from Wisconsin, came in, had an instant impact, most receptions on the team with 42, and had 783 yards along with his 2 touchdowns. And then a lot of people talk about this guy, Eugene Wilson, the true sophomore, I think. Anyways, he's a sophomore. He is extremely talented, 5-star, All American, all this, all of that. He had only 266 yards this year. I was kind of disappointed they didn't give him more receptions, but he only had 19 receptions. And, you compare that to Chamari Dike, who had 42. If you get Wilson the ball more, he will produce more than these other receivers who have a ceiling. And Eugene Wilson seemingly has no ceiling. If they gave him the amount of touches that Ohio State gave Jeremiah Smith, I think that we would be talking about Eugene Wilson right there with Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith. That's how highly I think about him. But as it stands, he had 266 yards and just only 1 touchdown. Obviously, the long of 85, the big pass there from him. At tight end, I gave it a C plus. Honestly, should have been more of a C. So C plus area. Hayden Hansen, their number one tight end, sophomore, only had 207 yards. He was a pretty darn good blocker. Only 1 touchdown though on 15 receptions. So he made the most of his receptions, but they really didn't use the tight end all that much. So I have to give it a below average grade. And the offensive line was pretty. It was solid. It wasn't anything to write home about. It was above average. That's what I would say. Jake Slaughter at center was one of the best centers in the league, but once you get out to tackle and guard, it was pretty average. So they definitely have a bright spot in Jake Slaughter. He'll probably, I assume, he'll be coming back for his senior year, but I could be wrong about that. As of recording, I don't think he has said what he's going to do yet. But anyway, that is my thoughts on the offense. Let's now switch to the defense. Okay, so now we are going to just dive right in here, I guess. At coaching for the defensive side, I gave it a C. Again, it really wasn't a great defense this past year. Ranked pretty low and helped them lose a lot of games. So, coaching, I gave a C, so that is below average to me, very much so. And I mean, they definitely need an upgrade at the defensive. Really, all around the whole defensive staff needs kind of an upgrade, or at least for the current defensive staff to execute a lot better. But we're gonna start off with this defensive line here. This was the best graded position on the defense, in my opinion. I gave it a B, so it was above average. You had a ton of really good guys on the edge. Start with Tyreek Sapp, led the team in sacks with 7, so that's a really good number. And then you have guys like George Gums Jr., great name by the way, at that jack position, edge position, whatever you want to call it. But I stack him here in this defensive line. He had 5 sacks. And then guys who didn't really accumulate a whole lot of sacks, like Jack Pyburn. Obviously, he transferred. There's some bad blood there. He He won a lot of money. But anyway, that's another topic for another video. But he was very good against the run. Guys like Caleb Banks in the middle at that defensive tackle position was really good at 4.5 sacks. Of course, you can't forget Cam Jackson at the nose tackle. So I think that this was a pretty darn good defensive line, in my opinion, for SEC standards. Obviously, I think it was one of the better ones in the SEC. At linebacker, I gave it a C grade, so just below average. The linebackers, I don't want to call it a weakness because the secondary wasn't very great either. But there were definitely some bright spots. Um, as linebacker, Shamar James had 64 tackles and 2 sacks. He was very good. Guys like Jaden Robinson was very good. He had 52 sacks and 52 tackles. Wow. He did not have 52 sacks. He had 52 total tackles and 3.5 sacks. So, these guys got to the quarterback, but obviously there was still something left to be desired. They're not having your number one linebacker have 64 total tackles. Really, you need to be up near 100. And most teams' number one linebackers are near 100. So, linebackers, their main position is to stop the run and defend the pass. What does that entail? You are bringing people to the ground, be that with someone or on your own, and that's your main job. If you get sacks and interceptions, that's great. That's wonderful. But your main job is to get people on the ground. So when you have guys not really doing that or showing up big in that spot, I think there's an obvious deficiency there. And I hope Florida can rectify that. So at corner and safety, I gave them both C minus grades. They let up a lot of big plays. I don't think the scheme is very good, so you can't really fault them for that, which is why coaching grade was so low. Um, but you had guys like Bryce Thornton, who had 3 interceptions. He was a sophomore. Jason Marshall Jr. should be going to the draft, probably going in the middle rounds, fourth round, fifth round, something like that. And he was a decent corner for them. And then at safety, Jordan Castle was good at times, yes. And then Trickweezy Bridges, excuse me, that I had to read that for a second. At strong safety was pretty good. He'll probably be going to the draft a later round pick, so probably around 6 or 7. I just didn't really think this secondary room did very good. They let up a ton of passing yards pretty much every game that they played in the SEC, and really, the reason they lost that Florida game was because they couldn't cover anyone. Not the Florida game. The reason Florida lost the Miami game is because they couldn't cover anyone. So these are my thoughts on the defense. Okay, so now we come to the overall grading section where I compile everything that we just talked about and then add in the kicking situation. Really, that's what I do. So with that being said, overall coaching was a B minus. You had the offensive coaching was at about a B to B plus level. I graded Billy Napier at around a B plus level as well. I think the defensive coaching was around a C. You average that together, smush it together, I get a B minus, which is about an average grade. On offense, like I said, B plus, B in that level somewhere. Defense, C, C minus, somewhere in that level. And then special teams was an A, which is kind of what put it over the level of a C plus to a B minus. I don't grade special teams on the same level that I do offense and defense, but that being said, Trace Mack was really good for the Gators. And overall, this is a B minus team grade, so about an average team grade overall through the results. Obviously, this team power rated was a top 25 team all year. It seemed they were hyped as this very talented team, which they are, but the results have to speak for themselves. So about an average team grade. And before we move on to the highs and the lows of the season, which is the next segment here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel. I don't read ads. I don't implement ads. I don't do any of that stuff. I maintain everything free here for you. So the one thing I would ask you to do is to subscribe. I mean, I don't have promo codes. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm not affiliated with anyone. I'm just a guy trying to build up my brand here on YouTube and on X as well. So go follow me over on X as well. Just look up College Football 360. I should be there. Eddie from College Football 360. That's my name. And And yeah, subscribe. That's the best way to support the channel right now. It's one button. It's all you have to do. I'm not having you pay me anything. I'm not having anything else done. So that being said, really quick, comment your thoughts down below as well. Commenting helps drive engagement on the channel, and I engage with pretty much every comment as well. So we can have a thoughtful discussion down there as well, and like the video and share it around as well. Okay, enough of the plug. Let's move on here. Okay, we are now talking about the highs of the season, where I give what I thought were the highest points of the season. Excuse me, for the Gators slaughtering Tulane in the bowl win. It was really amazing to see the Gators come out and just absolutely dominate a team like Tulane. They were supposed to do it, and they did it, and they executed. And that hasn't always happened for this Gators team since 2020. Really hasn't happened as much as it should. Games like this have been closer than expected and whatnot. So the Gators came out, slaughtered Tulane, did what they were supposed to do. Even if Tulane was playing with an FCS roster, they didn't have their quarterback or any of their wide receivers or anything like that. So that being said, it was a great win for the Gators, and it showed recruits what they should be and can be. Spoiling Ole Miss's season is the next one. Yes, the mighty Lane Kiffin was downed by the 5-7 Gators, and Gators fans should take pride in that. Should laugh a little bit at that, like I did. I think that it was an amazing win. It kept Ole Miss out of the college football playoff, and took their ego down a bit. And Ole Miss always has this haughty toddy, ego. They're gonna go do this and that and whatever. So I thought it was great that the Gators won. I was rooting for them. I always try and root for the underdog a little bit. And then validating Lagway's presence is my third one here. With the true freshman starting as many games as Lagway did, and really the only other guy that could do that, I keep bringing him up, is Dylan Rayola. The only guy, you have all these questions, are they going to assimilate to a really giant play sheet? Are they going to get assimilated to the playbook, the atmosphere, getting hit by big time players instead of high school players? This isn't a high school anymore. You're not going to do whatever you want to do. So I think when you get these guys, these generational players like DJ Lagway and like Dylan Rayola, it's important to validate their presence when they step onto the field. And I think both of these quarterbacks definitely did. We're going to focus in on Lagway here. I think he definitely did. He showed his escapability, his running ability. Even if it didn't show up in the stat sheet, he can definitely do it. He just didn't do it as much or as he should. Yes, he was a little wild, a little inaccurate, threw a couple picks. He threw 9 interceptions, which is a very high number, but I think that he will be able to get that down a little bit. I think his ceiling is through the roof. And I don't mean that to be funny or anything like that, but I genuinely think that his ceiling is through the roof. He has Lamar Jackson potential, in my opinion. And then your highlight wins of the year, beating Ole Miss at home, LSU at home, and then I get it, Florida State was bad this year, but it's always fun to beat a rival. It always is. I know my team, when we beat a rival, it's awesome. Be that in middle school, high school, college, the teams I root for in the pros. I mean, anytime you get a rival win, it's great, especially at their place. So I get it that Florida State was bad, but this win was nothing to write off about. I think that it was a great win to beat a rival. Okay, so now, yes, we do have to do this section. I get it, Florida fans. Pretty much every fan base hates it when I do this segment here, but it has to be done. The lows of the season. The defense still didn't improve, in my opinion. They gave up a ton of passing yards. The defensive line was the best position on the defense, and it really wasn't anything to write home about. It was just average to above average. This team was still a middling team all season. You had some great wins like we talked about, but you also had some pretty bad losses. And that leads me to my third point, is getting blown out at home by Texas A&M and Miami. You should have a little bit more pride. This is the swamp. This is a top 5 atmosphere in all of college football when the team is really good. Right now, probably top 10, whatever. Hey, topic for another video. Another reason to subscribe and click the bell icon so that you're alerted when more stuff like that interesting video coming up, like stadium atmospheres and whatnot, would come out. So anyway, sorry, enough of that plug. But you should have a little bit more pride in where you play, especially being the Florida Gators, who are a historically blue blood organization and a team that really takes a lot of pride. It wasn't like they were a bad team this year. Like I said, a lot of people thought that they were top 25 power rated team. Not obviously not in the top 25 rankings at any point in the season, but a lot of people thought that they had a top 25 roster. So getting blown out by these schools, Texas 8-4 instead of A&M, if you get what I'm saying there. And then Miami, who ended up having a really good offense, I get that, but didn't really have a defense. You have to go out there and play with a little bit more pride. But those are the lows of the season to me. Comment yours if you have any. I think I'm not a huge expert in Florida. I know a lot about them, but I need some expert Florida fans in the comments section. Um, Giving me some advice. If that would be you, then go ahead and do it. And as we just go over 20 minutes and 30 seconds here, I want to just end this video. I really don't like going over 20 minutes, but sometimes it has to be done. Improvements that I'm looking for next season. Lagway keeps improving his accuracy. I think that was a big thing for me. His accuracy and decision making weren't. I should have put decision making in there as well, but accuracy and decision making, those were two things that I think he can definitely improve on. They're improvable things, and it's not like an invariable where he just can't improve it. Like an illness or whatever, or some sort of deficiency. But he can definitely improve his accuracy and decision making, and I think he will. And hopefully, like I said, these are improvements that I think are very reasonable. So I think that Lagway can definitely improve on his accuracy and decision making. Second one, general improvements on defense. I know this is very broad. It's kind of a cop out. I get it. But it definitely needs to happen. It kind of needs to happen everywhere. They lost a lot on the defensive line. They lost really their only good players in the secondary to the NFL draft. So they definitely need to replenish there at those positions and just really start getting some better results, and then some general coaching improvements. Billy Napier saved his job, but he definitely needs to improve a lot more than what he did. The coaching on the defense, in my opinion, was poor, and then the offensive game plan needs to improve a little bit too. I think everything can generally improve. With that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. Just a reminder, I don't exactly know which episode this is planned. It should be around episode 10. But I think that excuse me. I've already put out many videos on the channel just like this one, exactly formatted like that, with all sorts of different teams. You got the big heavy hitters like Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State, Bama coming up as well. Georgia, Texas, all the heavy hitters, a little bit of Colorado in there. But we also have some interesting teams like Florida that we talk about. Florida is a team where there's definitely a variety of opinion on them. Teams like Illinois, Nebraska, South Carolina as well. So go check out those videos as well. And I will see you guys in the next one.